The night before my sister's wedding, my mother called me into the kitchen. She didn't ask me to sit down. She didn't offer me coffee. She simply looked at me and said, "Emily, it's better if you don't come tomorrow." I stared at her. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had misunderstood her. "What do you mean?" My mother sighed as if I were making things difficult. "It's your sister's wedding. She deserves a peaceful day. You know how things have been between you two." I felt something tighten inside my chest. How exactly will I ruin her wedding? My mother avoided my eyes. Then she finally said the words I would never forget. "You just have a way of making everything about yourself. People will be asking questions. They'll be comparing you and your sister. It's better if you don't come. You'd ruin the atmosphere." I stood there in complete silence. My younger sister, Madison, was getting married the next morning. And my own mother was telling me I wasn't welcome. I could have argued. I could have cried. I could have reminded her that I had spent the last 6 months helping Madison plan that wedding. I had designed the invitations. I had paid for part of the photographer. I had helped her choose the flowers. I had even spent 3 weekends helping her find the perfect wedding dress. But suddenly none of that mattered. Apparently my presence was the problem, so I simply nodded. "Okay?" My mother looked surprised. "That's it?" I forced a small smile. "What else do you want me to say?" She said nothing. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. Then I cried. Not because I wasn't invited to a wedding. I cried because the people who were supposed to love me had made me feel like my existence was an inconvenience. My sister didn't call me that night. She didn't text me, not even once. The next morning, I woke up early. I could hear cars leaving my parents' house. Family members were laughing downstairs. Music was playing. Everyone was getting ready for Madison's wedding, and I was sitting alone in my bedroom. I looked at my phone. There was one new message from Madison. It said, "Mom said it's better if you stay home. Please don't make this harder than it already is." I read that message 3 times. Then I deleted it. I didn't respond. That was the last time I spoke to my family for a long time. But what they didn't know was that I had a completely different life waiting for me. For the previous 2 years, I had been working on something quietly, something nobody in my family knew about. I had always loved filmmaking. Ever since I was a teenager, I had been creating short films and editing videos. But my family never took it seriously. My father used to say, "Get a real job." My mother would laugh whenever I talked about making movies. And Madison, she always told me that I was wasting my time. So eventually, I stopped talking about it. I worked quietly. I learned everything I could: camera work, editing, storytelling, sound design, marketing. And eventually, I started producing small wedding videos for people who couldn't afford expensive production companies. 1 client became 3, 3 became 10, and 10 became dozens. Then, 6 months before Madison's wedding, I received an unexpected opportunity. A famous wedding venue contacted me. They had seen one of my videos online. They loved my work. They offered me a chance to produce a cinematic wedding film for a well-known couple. The project was huge. It would be seen by millions of people. But there was one thing I hadn't told anyone. The couple wanted me to document their wedding in a completely new style. It would be emotional, cinematic, personal. And when the video was released, it could potentially reach a worldwide audience. I accepted the project. I worked day and night. But because of my family situation, I never told them. I didn't want their opinions. I didn't want their criticism. And after what my mother said, I certainly didn't want their approval. So while my family was celebrating Madison's wedding, I was sitting alone in my apartment, editing footage for a project that could completely change my life. That evening, I received another message. This time from my cousin Jessica. She wrote, "I'm sorry they treated you like that. Madison's wedding was beautiful, but honestly, everyone kept asking why you weren't there." I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my editing software. I put my headphones on, and I worked. For the next several weeks, I disappeared into my work. I barely spoke to anyone from my family. My mother called once. I didn't answer. Madison called twice. I didn't answer. Then one afternoon my father called. I picked up. His voice was cold. "Your mother says you're still upset." I laughed quietly. "Upset?" "Yes." "No, Dad, I'm not upset anymore." There was silence. Then he asked, "So you're coming to Thanksgiving?" I looked out the window. No, why not? Because apparently my presence ruins the atmosphere. He became angry. That was your mother's decision. Don't punish the whole family. I took a deep breath. I'm not punishing anyone. Then I hung up. That was the last conversation I had with him. 2 months passed, and then something happened that none of them expected. The wedding film I had been working on was released. At first, nothing happened. A few thousand views, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Within days, the video started spreading across social media. People were sharing it. Reaction channels were talking about it. Major wedding pages were posting clips from it. Then one morning, I woke up to hundreds of notifications. The video had crossed 10 million views. I stared at the screen in disbelief, but it didn't stop there. Within another week, it had reached tens of millions of views worldwide. People loved the emotional storytelling. They loved the cinematic shots. They loved the way I had captured the couple's story. And suddenly, my name was everywhere. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Production companies wanted to hire me. Wedding brands wanted partnerships. Television producers wanted interviews. And then something even more unexpected happened. One of the biggest entertainment pages in the country posted my wedding film with the caption, "This filmmaker just changed the way wedding stories are told." My family saw it. Of course they did. My mother called me that same night. I stared at her name on my phone. For the first time in months, I answered, "Hello?" There was silence. Then my mother whispered, "Emily?" "Yes." "I saw your video." "I know." "You made that?" "Yes." Her voice changed. There was pride in it now. "I didn't know you were doing this." I smiled sadly. "You never asked." She didn't respond. Then she said something I never expected. "I'm proud of you." Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they hurt, because I had spent years wanting to hear them, and now that I didn't need them anymore, they finally came. My mother asked if we could meet. I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop near my apartment. She looked different, not physically, emotionally. She seemed nervous. She sat across from me and said, "I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything. She continued, "What I said before Madison's wedding was wrong." I looked at her. "Which part?" She lowered her eyes. "All of it." For a moment, I felt that old pain again, but I wasn't the same person anymore. I had learned something during those 2 months. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't hurting someone back. It's becoming so successful that the people who rejected you realize they were wrong without you having to say a word. My mother asked, "Will you come home?" I shook my head. "Not yet." She nodded slowly. "I understand." Then she asked, "Are you still angry with Madison?" I thought about it. "No." She looked surprised. "I forgive her." "Really?" "Yes. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to go back to the way things were." She didn't argue. She simply nodded. 3 months later, my company received its biggest opportunity yet. I was hired to produce a massive destination wedding. The wedding was going to be attended by celebrities, business leaders, filmmakers, influencers, and thousands of guests. The project was enormous, and this time I decided to do something different. I wanted to create a documentary about the entire experience. So I spent weeks filming the preparations, the rehearsals, the emotional moments, the family speeches, the ceremony, the celebration. And eventually, I created a 90-minute wedding documentary. When it premiered online, it exploded. Within 48 hours, it became one of the most watched wedding films on the platform. And that's when my mother saw it. She called me immediately. But this time, she wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she had seen something else. At the end of the documentary, I had included a special section. It was about family, about rejection, about being told you weren't good enough, and about what happens when you stop begging people to accept you. My mother watched the entire thing. Then she called. Her voice was shaking. "Emily." "Yes?" I saw the guest list. I froze. "What guest list?" "The premiere." I realized what she meant. The documentary was going to have a private premiere at a major event, and the guest list had been released publicly. My mother had seen the names. She had expected to see celebrities, directors, actors, influencers, business leaders. But she hadn't expected to see familiar names. My father, my cousins, former family friends, people who had supported me. And right at the top of the list was one name that made my mother faint. Madison, my sister. I had invited her, not because I needed her, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted her to see what I had built after everyone told me I didn't belong. The premiere night arrived. The venue was packed. Cameras flashed everywhere. Reporters stood outside. People from the entertainment industry filled the room. I walked onto the red carpet wearing a simple black dress. And then I saw my family. My father was standing beside my mother. Madison was beside them. She looked nervous. When she saw me, she walked toward me. "Emily," I stopped. She looked like she wanted to say 100 things. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded. "Thank you." She looked confused. "That's all?" I smiled. "What else should I say?" She started crying. "I was wrong." "I know." "I should have invited you." "I know." "I shouldn't have listened to Mom." I looked at her. "Madison, I don't want to spend the rest of my life talking about that wedding." She wiped her tears. "Then why did you invite me tonight?" I looked around the room, at the cameras, at the people who had supported me, at the life I had built. Then I looked back at my sister. "Because I wanted you to see something." "What?" I smiled. "I wanted you to see what happened when I stopped trying to fit into a room that didn't want me." She cried harder. I hugged her, not because I had forgotten, but because I had finally healed. That night, the documentary received a standing ovation, and when I walked onto the stage, I looked out at the crowd. My mother was crying, my father was clapping, Madison was smiling through her tears. I took the microphone, and I said, 2 months ago, I was told that my presence would ruin the atmosphere. The entire room became silent. I smiled. So I stayed home. People laughed softly. But sometimes, being excluded is the best thing that can happen to you. I looked toward my family, because when one door closes, you finally have the time to build your own. The audience stood and applauded. I didn't look back at my family again. I didn't need to, because that night I understood something I wish I had learned years earlier. You don't have to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it. You don't have to beg for an invitation. You don't have to fight for a seat at a table where everyone wants you standing outside. Sometimes you simply walk away, you build your own table, you choose your own people, and eventually the same people who once told you that you would ruin the atmosphere will be standing outside, hoping you will let them in. That night, I went home alone. I took off my heels, I sat by the window, and for the first time in years I felt completely peaceful. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. It said, "I'm sorry I made you feel unwanted." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed 3 words, "I forgive you." I put my phone down, and I smiled, because I finally realized something. The greatest revenge isn't making someone regret hurting you. The greatest revenge is building a life so beautiful that their rejection no longer matters. And that was exactly what I had done. I wasn't the girl who had been excluded from her sister's wedding anymore. I was the woman who had created a life nobody could take away from her. And sometimes, the moment your family shuts the door on you is the exact moment your real life finally begins.